What's up, guys? Today I want to do something a little different. Today we're going to talk about the priest class in general, and this particular video will be about the core control priest cards. And this will be a very in-depth video. We're going to talk a lot about the options that you play in the deck, what is core, what's like a staple of the archetype, and how you can build around it, and why you should build around certain cards. Okay, so priest. Control Priest is a very reactive deck. It wants to spend the early turns really doing nothing, just kind of stalling, until you can get into a big like blade board wipe with Circle of Healing, and then you want to just outlast your opponent with resources. That said, there are a couple cards that if you play Control Priest are pretty core. Okay, the one biggest core is probably the Akanai Soul Priest plus Circle of Healing combo. So obviously you need 2 Circle of Healing, and you need 2 Soul Priests. So this is basically a 4-mana Flame Strike if you have both of them, and you still keep the Akanai Soul Priest on board, and you can do things like pump in with Power Word Shield, and you can do a lot of fun things with Zombie Chow or whatnot, right? So it's pretty cool. But this is pretty integral to all control lists with Priest, because this is one of your few ways of regaining board control or neutralizing the board if your opponent starts flooding it. Okay? Now, if we're going to play Circle Healing, chances are you might as well play Injured Blade Master as well. So Injured Blade Master, as you all know, is 3 for a 4/7. But when it comes into play, it deals 4 damage to himself. So you imagine if you get a circle. So basically, your mulligans consist of like having a circle in your opening hand and mulliganing hard to get an Akanai Soul Priest or a Blade Master, depending on what the matchup is. Against slower decks, you want to get a Blade Master, so you can go turn 2, coin, Blade Master, Circle of Healing for a 4/7 on turn 2 or turn 3. And against very aggressive decks, you want the Soul Priest instead, so you can go turn 3 coin, board wipe, or turn 4 circle for the board wipe, or turn 6, whatever, right? But you get the drift. This is one package here. Okay, this is the circle package, right? There are other cards that are considered core to Priest, and we'll go through those. Northshire Cleric, I feel, is core because the deck doesn't really have a lot of ways to draw cards. And Cleric can really, if you can defend a Cleric and keep him safe on board, you can really garner a huge amount of card advantage over the course of turns with hero power. Power Word Shield is another core card. Number 1, it's a spell, so it works good with Wild Pyromancer. And number 2, it's a cantrip, draws you a card. And number 3, it already boosts your board and makes your hero power more powerful. Another core card is 1 Shadow Word Death. I feel like you need to play at least one of this. Most decks play Big Game Hunter, so playing a Shadow Word Death seems pretty relevant. I play 2 Shadow Word Deaths. I feel like 2 Shadow Word Deaths are core, but I could see how people would want to play 1. I think 1 Holy Nova is very important. Maybe 2 Holy Nova might be a little weird, but I think you need to at least 1 to kind of allow you that extra board clear for small things or stealth things like Shaded Naxxramas early in the game. And this combines well with Wild Pyro, which we're going to talk about shortly. Vol'jin, I feel, is a core card. This legendary allows you to do a lot of things. Number 1, it can take care of big threats when you have control of the board. And also, you can take care of big threats when you don't have control of the board. You can play this with Holy Nova to kill a guy. You can play this with Smite. There's a variety of things you can do with this to make this powerful. You can have control of the board, play this, and then trade a Zombie Chow into the minion. There's many different things you can do. It's very versatile. I think it's a strong card. I think it's a must. And the penultimate Priest card, Mind Control. Unless you're facing a meta that is so aggressive that you don't think you're gonna ever get to turn 10 regularly, and that you rather just survive the early turns, then you probably wouldn't run this. But I feel this is core. Against Paladin, against Control Warrior, against Druid, this card single-handedly wins games. Okay, this is how you take care of their biggest and baddest threat. So, yeah. These are the cards that I consider core to the, well, actually, there's a couple more cards that we're missing here. We have all these spells. Another thing that works good with spells is Wild Pyromancer. I think if you are a control list, you want to play 2 of these. Wild Pyro is rarely a turn 2 play. It's usually a turn 3, turn 4, turn 5 play, or turn 7 play. But it works well with a lot of your spells like Power Word, Shield, Shadow Word, Death, Holy Fire, and Sylvanas Windrunner. I think Sylvanas should almost be a priest card. It should be the priest legendary instead of Velen, Prophet Velen. But yeah, gain control of and random enemy minion controls. You can kill this with Shadow Word Death. So these cards are what I consider to be core to the class. I also consider Holy Fire to be core, especially for the control builds. It gives you added reach and more life to kind of just heal. I also feel Cabal Shadow Priest is core. Maybe not 2, but I think having 1 is a pretty strong addition to a core of your deck. And there are 2 other things that I believe are core. One is I think every priest deck should have at least 2 taunts. So your 2 taunts, the most common options are Senjin Shield Masters or Sludge Belchers, right? So depending on how you control your curve, that should dictate what you play. Senjin is just as powerful as this card. It comes down a turn earlier. While this is the 1/2 that you get from this when it dies, it's not that helpful. Although there are times when that can be very helpful. So really, it's just a matter of what you have in your curve. Maybe you're flooded in 5 drops, in which case you play Senjin. Maybe you don't have enough early game or late game board presence, in which case you play Sludge Belcher, right? So it's really up to you. But this is basically, we'll throw in Sludge Belchers here, right? This is basically the core. I also like to add either Harrison or Lotheb, depending on what the meta is at the time. Lotheb, for me right now, I don't really see a lot of Control Warriors or Oil Rogues. And those matchups are already bad to begin with. Oil Rogue is already a bad matchup to begin with, and Harrison doesn't really shore that matchup up. So I prefer Lotheb. Deals with the other decks in the format, the temple-based decks. Yeah, this is pretty much a core of the deck. So we have 22 cards, give or take, that every priest deck should run. At least every control list should run. Now, how you build upon this, is totally dependent on you. Like I said, I personally like 2 Shadow Word Deaths. I feel more comfortable having 2. So that is already a card I need to have. What else do I like? I think every priest list should run 2 to 4 copies of the following cards: Light of the Naru and Zombie Chow. Now the reason why this is because you either play Zombie Chow so that you have a board presence early and you can deal with theirs, or you play Light of the Naru because you don't have a board presence early and you need to recoup some of the life that's lost. Okay, so there's 2 different options with that school of thought, and we're gonna look at that like right now. So what I've done here, I have 2 decks, and here's one list. This is a more control-oriented list. You can see it has all the core cards we talked about: Circles, Shields, Clerics, Pyros, Deaths. But it has Senjins, but it has a few more cards, okay? So this list has 2 Light of the Naru, okay? Because I only have 1 Zombie Chow, okay? But it does have a Zombie Chow. So altogether, it has 3 of this particular drop. Let's call this the damage mitigation drop, okay? Now, I could add another Zombie Chow, or I could get rid of a Zombie Chow. But if I do get rid of a Zombie Chow, then I should not get rid of another Light of the Naru. I have to have at least 2 of these cards. So maybe 1 Light of the Gnarl and 1 Zombie Chow, or maybe 2 Lights and 1 Zombie Chow as I have here, or maybe 2 Lights and 2 Zombie Chows. That is all just dependent on me. Okay. The other card that I feel is important is this 3-drop spot. Okay. Now there are a few cards at the 3-drop spot that you really need to consider here. Dark Cultist, Velen's Chosen, and Thoughtsteel. Some people consider Shadow Form one of the drops too, but I don't. Shadow Form is really, it's a tempo-based deck that you really need to build around. But these 3 cards right here, Dark Cultist, Velen's Chosen, and Thoughtsteel, you really need to think about them. Okay, I feel like Velen's Chosen is the strongest of all the choices here. Velen's Chosen makes your 1 drops and 2 drops and your 3 drops very, very strong. This makes your clerics, freaking 3 5s or 3 7s, and it makes your zombie chows injured blade masters. Okay, and it gives you that spell damage, which may not be that big of a deal, but it is helpful. This is huge. Like, you can imagine going turn 1 zombie chow, turn 2 coin Velen's Chosen. That's a big, big threat to deal with early in the game. Okay. Because of that, I feel playing 2 Velen's Chosen is just very helpful for the deck. Now, here's the thing. Velen's Chosen, the earliest I can play this would be on turn 2 with the coin, or turn 3 on the play. But realistically, we should consider playing it on turn 4. Now, the reason why I say that is because chances are naked cleric or zombie chow is just going to die unless they get, if they're just like, if I go turn 2 cleric and then turn 3 Velen's Chosen, chances are the cleric's going to die before I get the chance to put the buff on him. So what I want to ensure is that my chance of having a target to put this buff on is fairly high between turns 1, 2, 3. So I want to be sure that by turn 4 on the play and by turn 3 on the draw, because I'll have the coin, right? By that amount of time, that I have a very high percentage to get a 1-drop, okay? Now, a 1-drop or a 2-drop, okay? Because we consider Wild Pyromancer that. So I want to say 85%. Oh, let's say 75% of the time. 75% of the time, by turn 3 on the draw and turn 4 on the play, I want to see either a 1 or a 2-drop. Okay? So I'm going to look at this table right here. And I don't know if you can really see this in detail, but this is a graph that shows the hypergeometric distribution of the cards. Okay? So this is a lot of math, but we're gonna get through this easily here. So by turn 4 on the play, I want an 85 or 75% chance of drawing one of the cards. So here is 76% by turn 4. So that means I have to play 5 drops, 5 cards that either are a 1 or a 2-drop. Okay. So I look back here, and do I have them? I got 2 clerics, 2 pyros, 1 zombie chow. Now, if I got rid of the zombie chow, that means I would only have 4 cards, and that would put my percentage at only 67%, which is just a third, is kind of low. So that's why I'm forced to play a chow here, okay? Because some people play like, Smite, you could play whatever, but because I'm playing Velen's Chosen, and because 75% of the time I want to make sure that I have a 1 or 2 drop by turn 4 or turn 3 on the play or on the draw, I am forced to play this zombie chow. Okay? I know that's a lot of math there, but that's really going to help. These are the kind of tweaks that you need to ensure consistency in your deck. Okay? So there's that. Velen's Chosen, okay, we talked about that a little bit. Sen'jin's Shieldmaster. In this deck in particular, I'm going with Sen'jin because I don't have that many early game creatures. So playing this on turn 4, or playing a creature on turn 4 is pretty important. So that's why I chose Sen'jin instead of Sludge Belcher. Also, because I chose Sen'jin, that kind of frees me up at the 5-drop spot, so I'm playing another Holy Nova. Actually, I think Holy Nova is probably the wrong card to play here. So I'm going to get rid of Holy Nova, and I'm going to choose a Light Bomb. Because my curve can afford that. So I'm going to add a Light Bomb here. Okay? And then here's the rest of the curve. Lotheb, Vol'jin, Holy Fire. These are all cards that I said were core to the deck. And here I'm running Ysera. The deck always has one spot for a kind of a bomb. Now the bomb can be anything. It can be Dr. Boom, it can be Trogzor, it can be Ysera, it could be Kel'Thuzad, it could be Sneeds, it could be Ragnaros. This is really up to you to decide what goes good here. I'm not fully sold on Ysera. I mean, Sneeds is another awesome choice. But yeah, for now I'm going with Ysera. I feel like it's probably the better control bomb. Okay? So this is one deck. This is one take on the priest archetype. Okay, and this is very similar to, if you see a lot of the priest decks available now, like that Brazilian guy on Hearthstone. I think this deck is very, very similar to this. Okay. Now here's another list. Now we're going to go with one that has Sludge Belchers instead. So this one has relatively the same cards as we discussed as core cards, but with small changes. Okay. As you can see here, I'm not running any Light of the Naru. But remember, I said earlier that you should run at least 2 to 4 Light of the Narus / Zombie Chows. So since I'm running 0 Light of the Narus, I decided I have to run the Zombie Chows. Okay? Here's the Pyros, here's the Deaths, here's the Velen's Chosen. Now, here I've added Dark Cultist. This is a card that we discussed among the 3 drops. So, Velen's Chosen is good against all decks, in my opinion. Thoughtsteal is good against slow decks, control decks, and Dark Cultist is better against aggressive decks where you need to build a board. Okay, so in aggressive metas, I prefer the Dark Cultist over the Thoughtsteal. Now, this could be 1 Dark Cultist and 1 Thoughtsteal, or it could be 1 Velen's Chosen, 2 Dark Cultists, 1 Thoughtsteal, or any combination. Okay, but like I said, I prefer Velen's Chosen. I don't really like Thoughtsteal as a card, period. The meta is always fast. To me, there's always people playing creatures. So here I've gone with the Dark Cultist. Okay? So that explains these choices right here. Now continue Injured Blaze Masters, Alchemize, Holy Nova. I'm only playing 1 copy of that. And as you notice, I'm not playing the Light Bomb because I'm playing a higher curve with Sludge Belchers. So the rest of the deck is the same. Lotheb, Vol'jin, Holy Fire, Cabal, Sylvanas, Mind Control. Now the only change here is the 7-drop, which is the late game bomb that we talked about. And instead of running Ysera like I did in the other deck, I feel like this deck has a better board presence because it fights for the board earlier. So I'm running Trogzor because I feel like I can defend a Trogzor better. Okay, so there are 2 different decks here, very closely, very similar in their build, but because of small changes in cards, they affect your entire mana curve, and as such, you have to adjust accordingly. Okay, so I'm not saying this is the be-all, end-all of priest decks, but for control decks, I think following that type of build and archetype is pretty accurate. So if you have any questions, or maybe you don't agree with some of the things I've said about these 2 decks, or about the archetype in general, please feel free to put them in the comments and explain your reasoning on why you think it should be something else. I do feel like what I've said is fairly accurate to the archetype in general. So yeah, let me know. I'm still open to criticisms, and I don't know everything at all, or I'm sure I don't know everything. So, give me feedback. Let me know, and maybe I can add it to the next video.